We'll get started in just a minute here. And if everyone's ready, let's go ahead and get started. I'm Claire Juncker. I'm Executive Director here at Peace Trees Vietnam. And I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome you all here tonight for a book talk with Nguyễn, Phan, author of the best-selling novel, The Mountain Sing, and works of poetry. We're very excited to have her here with us tonight. As most of you know, Quay Mai was our honored guest at our anniversary celebration last fall, and we were truly delighted when she accepted our invitation to dive deeper into her wonderful book and continue the conversation with the Peace Trees community today. I'm also very, very happy to welcome and introduce you to our moderator, Grace Rajendran. She's a book lover, experienced moderator, and event producer currently with the University Bookstore, and she shares our love of The Mountain Sing as well as Quay Mai's other work. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to hear from both of them tonight. Before I turn it over to them, I want to thank all of you who are here tonight for your support of Peace Trees and share with you just a few updates on what your support has meant to our work in the last year, and especially in the first few months of 2022. For those of you joining us for the first time tonight, Peace Trees Vietnam was founded on the day of normalization between the US and Vietnam to begin building bridges of friendship between the people of our countries. And since that day, we've worked every day to remove bombs and mines remaining from wartime and assist local communities as they return land to productive use by supporting programs in education and agriculture. And thanks to your support, Peace Trees' work has continued well through the ups and downs of the last couple of years. And I know we've told you a lot about that, but 2022 has started out strong, so I want to share with you a few notes. First, in the first 3 months of 2022, our Quang Tri teams removed 1,200 unexploded bombs and mines remaining from the war, and taught more than 400 mine risk education sessions. That means that thousands of people are better able to keep themselves safe if they encounter a bomb or a mine while we work to clear the ordnance remaining in Quang Tri and Quang Binh. We've continued our growth into Quang Binh province, where we expanded just a few years ago. And in the last year, that expansion benefited more than 10,000 people. This community of supporters, many of you here tonight, made it possible for us to provide 236 scholarships across both provinces. We've now built 20 kindergartens, and 3 more are in development right now. And I'm excited to share that we are getting ready to relaunch our citizen diplomacy program. We have not taken a trip since January 2020. We're very excited to be able to relaunch our work building friendship and people-to-people ties between Americans and Vietnamese, and invite others from all over the world to join our citizen diplomacy program beginning very late this year, and definitely we'll have trips going in 2023 that you might like to be a part of. So I invite you to get in contact with us and learn more about those programs. We're also, our organization here in the US would love to talk with you in any detail about any of our programs, but tonight is about The Mountain Sing and this wonderful conversation we're about to have. So with that, I'll turn it over to our honored guests, and thank you all again for being here.
Thank you, Claire, for that lovely welcome, and thank you to Peace Trees Vietnam for organizing this event and the incredible work you do. And hello, everyone. We're so glad that you could join us today for this book club style talk with Dr. Nguyễn, Phan, Quay Mai for her novel, The Mountain Sing. My name is Grace, and I'm the events producer at University Bookstore in Seattle, and I have the pleasure of being your facilitator today. I have hosted Quay Mai many times now, in person and on Zoom, and each time I and the audience have left feeling moved and inspired. And that is my wish for you and us tonight. So I invite you to add questions to the Q&A field at the bottom of your Zoom screens at any time during the event. And we'll get to them at the end of the session. And we'll also try and sprinkle these questions in as we go, and want to make this more of a conversation that shifts and changes to wherever you, our audience, wants us to take it. And although she needs no introduction, I would like to just say a few words about our author tonight to start it off and for the benefit of people watching the event later. Born into the Vietnam War in 1973, Nguyen Phan Quay Mai grew up witnessing the war's devastation and its aftermath. She worked as a street seller and rice farmer before winning a scholarship to attend university in Australia. She's the author of 8 books of poetry, fiction and nonfiction in Vietnamese, and her writing has been translated and published in more than 15 countries. She's been honored with some of the top literary awards in the world. Thank you, Quay Mai, for joining us so early in the morning in Vietnam, although you said you've already been up and went to the beach. And viewers, we would love to know where you're zooming in from, so please let us know in the chat. So Quay Mai, I'm so excited to talk to you today. It always feels like I'm visiting with a good friend over a cup of tea. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Grace, for being the host of our conversation today. I feel so emotional right now after listening to Claire's speech about the impact of Peace Trees Vietnam. I'm calling in from Hội An in the middle region of Vietnam. I'm surrounded by a rice harvest, and you know, the rice fields around me are just golden. They are so beautiful. And this morning I went with my bike, you know, along the rice fields, and I saw how hard these farmers are working, and they are looking forward to the future. Everyone is looking forward, working hard, having a lot of hope. But the impact of the war is still here. Just recently, there was a woman who was going to work next to a rice field close by here, not too far away from here. And you know, somebody was burning something on the rice field, and you know, leftover from the war exploded and killed her. So you can see that the impact of Peace Trees work is real, is saving lives. Peace Trees is not just saving lives, but is also providing, you know, educational opportunities via scholarships. So by your presence here, by your support of Peace Trees, we are making a difference. I mean, I wrote the Mountain Sing with the hope that we as humans come together more, help each other more to heal, to reconcile. And I think Peace Trees is really a great organization to help us do that. So I'm really honored to be hosted tonight and to be supported by Peace Trees. And I am so honored to be having this conversation with you, Grace. You know, my book was launched into the pandemic, right? You know, at the start of the pandemic. It was released in March 2020. So my husband was just reminding me yesterday of how sad I felt. I didn't feel promoting my book because I thought it wasn't right to talk about my book when people were dying because of COVID. But then, you know, people like Grace lifted my book and championed it and organized so many virtual events for me. So my physical book tour was canceled, but I was able to meet readers through conversations like this. So I'm really honored to be having this conversation today. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. And thank you for those beautiful words as well. About the powerful work that this organization is doing. And I'm also honored to be able to be here and play a part in this conversation. And as Quay Mai said, yes, I met her for the first time really virtually in 2020 when the book was published, and she was supposed to come to the University of Washington and do an event with us, but everything was canceled due to the pandemic. But since then, you know, we've kept in touch, and I just grew not only to love the book, but also to have developed so much respect and admiration for who she is as a person, and her warmth and her spirit and her generosity just really impact a lot of people. And I've seen that firsthand at every event that I've been with her. And so I made the Mountain Sing a staff favorite at our store and have been hand selling it to everyone because I think it's important. It's a beautiful book. It's a powerful representation of war, the effects of war, and how it impacts communities. And so we'd love to hear from you too, and share your thoughts with our audience members as well. So if you've read the book, please let us know how it resonated with you as well. And so, Koi Mai, it's no surprise to us because with all of your tireless promotion of peace and tolerance and the profound anti-war message of the Mountain Sing, that it won the runner-up fiction prize of last year's Dayton Literary Peace Prize. So first of all, everyone join me in congratulating Koi Mai on this wonderful honor. And second, you got to meet some incredible writers, including Margaret Atwood, at the in-person event last year. Can you tell us all a little bit about how that went and what that meant to you?
Oh, I was really surprised to have won this runner-up prize. My book was against some really like it was against some of my favorite books of 2020, so it was my great honor. And especially the prize was about promoting peace, so I was very honored to have met many wonderful writers whom I deeply admire for so many years there, including Margaret Atwood. And after my speech there at the ceremony, Margaret gave me the biggest hug, and she said, "You are wonderful." And then at that night, she offered to read my poems. So, she's very wise and, and so intelligent and so sharp. When she enters into a room, there's some light around her, right? And and then she read my poems and she told my fortune.
Is it a secret, or can you share that with us?
No, it's not a secret, but she said I suffered a lot of childhood trauma, and she could see it on my hand, on my palms. And then she said that my writing career is self-made. So she could see that I did a lot of things before, but I was determined to pursue this writing career. And yeah, so whatever she predicted was most wonderful to hear, and it reminded of how hard I had to fight to become a writer, because when growing up as a child, I loved reading, so I always wanted to become a writer. So I listened to people's stories, so I wrote in my diary, and I still have many diaries that I kept from those early days. And I wanted to be a writer, and my parents said no, and then my two brothers told me, we don't have enough to eat, so study and do something useful. So I listened to them. I went off and studied business and became one of the first investors of the Vietnamese stock market. But I think I did many jobs, but literature always called out for me, and I returned to my writing dream in 2000 and I think 2006. Yeah, so yeah, it took me a long time to find my way back to my dream, and I'm just so happy to be here, because I love writing every day. I love to escape into a world of imagination. So I think The Mountain Sing, took me 7 years to write. It was really painful, and I don't think I could have been able to write it as a nonfiction account, because it's very, very personal. I lost many family members due to historical events of Vietnam. For example, I lost 3 family members to the Great Hunger of 1945. My grandma and my uncle and great uncle died together during that time, and to write about it was really painful. But luckily, I was able to use my imagination to kind of with fiction, you can remove yourself a little bit away from the real life events. I did write a memoir account of my experiences growing up in Vietnam. So I was born in the north of Vietnam, and when I was 6 years old, I moved to the south. And at that time, as someone who I felt like a refugee, because Vietnam had been divided into north and south. So being from the north, and moving to the South, I was hated by my neighbors. I was bullied at school, and so many things happened to my family and also to people around me. So I did write my experiences growing up, and it's really personal and really painful. So I haven't been able to show it to anyone yet. So I don't know what I can do with that, because I felt like if I have it published, I will betray my parents, because of the decisions that the things that they had to do to save us.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming back to writing. I know we're all grateful that you did. And definitely reading the book, you can feel how personal and how much pain there was in that story. And so I also want to thank you for sharing, because reading it, you looked at war in a completely different way because of the perspectives that you brought to it. And I think, the tales of your family and what you were talking about from going from north to south, and all of those perspectives are in that story and in that book, and just so rich with those experiences. And now we're sadly at another time where the world is seeing war and worldwide conflict again. And so your message and words continue to be important, and especially your message of hope. As people feel the stress and weight of this conflict, what do you wish that they can take away from your writing and from this book in particular?
So recently, I watched a conversation with Ocean Vuong. Anyone interested in Vietnam should get Ocean Vuong's new book, Time is a Mother, from University Bookstore from Grace. And I think, Grace, you have signed copies, right?
We do, yes.
Yes. Ocean Vuong is the most wonderful writer, and he's so inspirational. And he said, when you finish writing a book is like building a boat. When you finish writing it, you release it into a river, and it will have its own life. And then as a writer, you go on and build other boats, other things, create new work. You can't be with your boat all the time, because then you can't create. And in that way, he doesn't have expectations of what the readers can make out of his boat, because they can endorse that boat and make it their own. And I also wish each reader to make sense of this book in their own way. I'm sure each reader has their own experiences that they can reflect on, they can channel into the reading experiences of the Mountain Sing. And I feel like, being a novelist, I'm a gardener. The research that I do sets the foundation for the garden, and I use my creative technique to build a tree, right? And to make the trunk and the branches and give the tree the leaves. But the flowers and the fruits of the tree can only be the result of the interaction with readers. So without you readers, my book is dead. So you give life to my novel. So I really hope each person can make sense of the book in different ways. So if I must choose a wish for people to take away from the book, I would say an appreciation for peace. As Grace just said, our world is still devastated by wars and armed conflicts, and I really think that we need to read each other more, and we need to appreciate peace more and fight for peace, because peace is so fragile. Peace can be stolen away in a blink of an eye, right? So we need to protect and preserve that peace. And like I wrote in a book, in time of wars, lives of people are just leaves on a tree. It can be swept away in millions. So if, as you see in Ukraine, people, I read a statistics that 5 million people have had to leave Ukraine until now. 5 million people who've lost their peaceful life, and so many people have died. So it's senseless. I don't know why humans cannot learn.
It really is. It really is. And there are many war stories written. There are novels about war told in English or captured in Western media. How oftentimes they're not told from the perspective of the people from those countries where the war occurred. And so it was important for you to not only tell the story of the Vietnam War from the Vietnamese own voice perspective, but also from the viewpoint of the women of that country. Can you speak a little bit about why this was vital for you and a vital need in literature and other media?
You know, if you look at the word history, so that's his and story. So mainly history has been told in the voices of men. And I think it's important to include women's stories because our stories have been brushed aside and also disregarded because, you know, traditionally, especially when it comes to war and conflicts, you know, people say, what do women know? I was told by a male writer, what do you know about wars? You were not there. But I think you know, anyone can write about anything with research and compassion. And I think it's really important for the younger generations to participate, you know, and write about bigger issues as well, because it has those issues have impacts on our lives. You know, we have no choice but to inherit the war. You know, in Vietnam, in the US, I mean, children of veterans of the war are still suffering from PTSD. And we have the right to speak up about these issues as well. I feel like, you know, throughout Vietnamese history, there have been many, you know, untold stories, you know, untold experiences by women. You know, and I grew up with really strong women who surrounded me, who proved to me that they are the pillar of the Vietnamese families and society and community. You know, like Vietnamese women had to be the pillars of returning soldiers. They had to be the doctors that heal the soldiers. And in Vietnam, there has been really very little research done on trauma and PTSD. And the women had to fight the ways how to heal these men. And, you know, if you read The Mountain Sing, you will see that we use food, we use care, we use conversations to heal and you know, and I think it's important to acknowledge the trauma of those who don't fight directly in the war, but the war comes to them. And I also had to write in the voices of Grandma Diệu Lan and Huong in the book, because, you know, I mean, there have been tens of thousands of books written about Vietnam, but how many books are written in the voices of Vietnamese women? Very few. So, you know, normally if you look at Hollywood movies, you will see that Vietnamese women don't have a voice. We are seen as victims, as those who need to be rescued by men. So in The Mountain Sing, I want to show that Vietnamese women rescue men, you know, like we do rescue men through our history. And also, you know, I want to fight back against representation issues of Vietnamese women of Vietnam. I want to show that Vietnam is not just a war. We are a country of more than 4,000 years of history. And you know, that's why I bring in food, not just pho and Vietnamese spring rolls, but, you know, like typical food that we eat, we cook every day, such as tofu and tomato sauce and coriander, which is delicious. You should try it out. It's really easy to cook.
We should try it.
Yeah. And also some of my favorite dishes, like, you know, rice, shrimp caught in the rice field, cooked with star fruits. Yeah, you should try it too.
I love that about the book because it is such a beautiful portrait of that family. And you have captured some incredibly strong female personalities, and they're inspiring, and I still think about them. And you talk about the food, you talk about the natural beauty. There's just so much. This is a book about war and the ravages of war, but you've also added in all of those pieces of it that makes the country feel like a whole country and gives everybody kind of voice and showcases the culture. So that was just such a beautiful addition to the book that that I'm still kind of researching. Oh, what's about the food that you talked about, the books that you've mentioned, the poetry, the poets. It's just so richly infused with Vietnamese culture. So you talk about representation and the importance of having those voices heard. Did this impact why you decided to write the novel in English?
Oh, yes, definitely. Actually, for years, I was a literary translator. I spent years of my life translating Vietnamese poetry because I wanted to showcase the beauty of Vietnamese literature. And then then I thought, okay, not many people read poetry, so I should translate a novel. So I was looking for a novel to translate, and then one day I told myself, why don't I write that novel? Then I saved myself the task of searching for the right novel and the task of translating it. So that began my venture of writing this novel. But I also wanted to insert a voice from Vietnam into the canon of literature in English about Vietnam, which still needs, more voices from here, from Vietnam, told by Vietnamese people. So I also, because Vietnamese language has suffered so much loss due to colonization. So, if when we are published in English, we are expected to strip away the critical marks of our language. So to make it easy for the Western readers. So I told my editor, I want to preserve the beauty and complexity of Vietnamese language by keeping the tonal marks, because each tonal mark is like a roof of a home. Without the mark, there's no meaning in the language. So that's why, I told my publisher, I want to sacrifice the commercial value of my book by having my name in full D critics. So if you can, I think most people, you see my name, Nguyễn Phan Mai, difficult to remember by readers, but I want to have the name as it is. I don't want to serve the Western readers by changing my language to please the readers. On the contrary, I want to invite the readers into an authentic Vietnam, to embrace the colors and complexity of our culture, and in the book, I don't translate some words, for example, bang tree or bang lang flowers or phượng flowers, because I want to invite the readers to enter Vietnam with not just your mind, but your heart. Sometimes you don't have to understand everything, but you can feel it. You can feel by the colors. You can feel by the texture. You can feel by hearing the sights, the sounds of the language, and observing the sights. That's what. In that way, you are more open to accept Vietnam as it is, and then you will, I hope that you will also become a part of Vietnam, and that Vietnam stays with you via this book. Because, I think once you read a book with not just your mind, but your heart, you live the lives of characters. And I want the readers to live the lives of Grandma Diệu Lan. And for those who read the book, I want to say that so many things are based on real life events. For example, how Grandma Diệu Lan had to abandon one child after the next to strangers to be able to save them happened to the grandma of my friend. So many things are based on real life accounts. So I interviewed hundreds of people to be able to write this book.
That was beautifully put, inviting the readers to read with their hearts as well. And that's exactly how I felt when I was reading the book. I felt immersed in the beauty of the culture. So that is, if you haven't read it yet, I do, we all invite you to read this book. It will change the way you perceive things, and it'll change your opinion about so many things and really give you a better understanding of the people of Vietnam. So I've been enjoying all your trips photos that you've been posting, and you're currently in Vietnam. So you and I connected a couple of years ago because of your love of bookstores and booksellers, and you've been visiting bookstores and booksellers in Vietnam. Can you speak a little bit about what the book culture and bookstores are like in Vietnam and how they've been helping you promote the book?
Coming home, I didn't know what to expect because my book hasn't been published in Vietnamese yet. So I was a bit nervous, but actually it has been overwhelming. There are booksellers who imported the book and sell it here, and they told me it's very popular. And actually, I've been invited by different universities to speak to students here, and the book is being taught by many international schools here. So I'm having 3 visits to 3 international schools here, and also visits to universities here, including Fulbright University Vietnam. So that's really has been a big surprise for me. I think nowadays in Vietnam there are young people who want to read world literature directly in English to be able to have access. So for example, the work of some work of Viet Thanh Nguyen's work, for example, The Sympathizer, which I highly recommend, hasn't been able to be published in Vietnam. So, for readers who want to have access to that book, they need to read it in English. In terms of book culture, sadly, nowadays, when I was growing up, we read a lot more. Because social media, the internet wasn't there, so we didn't have electricity either, so there wasn't so much entertainment. So I read books whenever I wanted to escape poverty and travel. Nowadays there are too many choices. So in writing The Mountain Sing, I also wanted to highlight the value of literature, how literature can really empower people and educate people and entertain people. Books, the bookstore that whom I signed copies to for in Hanoi actually had to close it due to COVID. So COVID has, Vietnam closed our border to the world for nearly 2 years. So it just opened up this March. So I encourage you, anyone out there who's able to return to Vietnam. Things are so reasonable. Hotels are really cheap right now, and the country is there for you to enjoy, and people really need tourism. And so many bookstores have been closed, and I think there's not a culture to promote independent bookstores. And one sad reality is that people pirate books a lot. So my book actually has been translated into Vietnamese by people whom I don't know, and they post the whole PDF file on internet for free, and it's infringement of copyright. And I think the translation is also not good. When I read it, I was so shocked because the person, I appreciated the time that whoever translated invested it in the book, but because they did it so fast, they didn't pay attention to the poetic images of my book. And I was just so shocked that it was available free on the internet. So I had to contact the webmaster of that website and tell the person to take it down. And the person said, but I had to be engaged in some argument. And if you look at you can search for many titles of world literature in Vietnamese, and it can be downloaded for free. And I have a translator in Vietnam, a friend who's a translator, and she said that she spent 2 years translating a book, and she was compensated she got $500 for 2 years of work. And the book is one of the top selling titles in Vietnam. And what happened? One person bought a copy or got a copy and hired a student to retype the thing, and then printed the book exactly as it is in real life and sold it. So there are many
Oh, no.
fake copies. There's, you know, the black market for book in Vietnam, like I wrote in the mountain thing, but also there's, you know, books are sold as fake commodities. Recently, the Ministry of Education had a case where, or you know, publisher who publishes educational books went on the media and said they they found a case where some people illegally printed thousands of educational books as, you know, fake, you know. So they stole the materials, they photocopy or they retype, and they print it and they sell it for very cheaply. So, you know, a lot of readers here buy fake books because they are cheap, even though the original books are cheap as well. So I think, you know, for literature to develop, we need to respect copyrights much more and support booksellers and writers and artists more.
We have a question in the chat. How did you come up with the idea for Tom's father to be Wicked Ghost? Was this based upon something you found in your research that gave you the idea?
Thank you so much, Charlotte, for this question. So actually, I invented Wicked Ghost with the idea to take revenge on the man who killed my grandma in the Great Hunger. So growing up, I had no grandmother because both of them died before I was born. One because of childbirth, the other, and my father's mother died in the Great Hunger, like I said before. And my father said she was killed on a cornfield by the guard of that cornfield. So what happened was that my father and his sister were really hungry during the time of the Great Hunger. So my grandma decided to venture into the cornfield and steal some corn for them, for her children. And the guard of that cornfield caught her and tied her to the corn plants. And she was too weak to break away, so she died there. And so the man came from our village, so my father knew him. And he said that after the Great Hunger, he moved away to the south of Vietnam together with the French. So you know, with fiction, you can do terrible things to people. So I told myself I would invent a terrible man and I call him Wicked Ghost. And I wanted to do the most horrific things to him and his family. So, you know, in writing a book, you find out that you discover your values and your beliefs as well. So I discovered that I'm not a violent person. And I discovered forgiveness. And I really believe that the world needs more forgiveness, and the circle of violence will not stop unless we forgive ourselves and we forgive each other. So in the book, there's a message of forgiveness. And Grandma Ziolan said, if you bear grudges, you are the ones who have to carry the burden of sorrow. And I think nowadays, you know, if, you know, I need to recommend another writer, Master Thich Nhat Hanh, who write books about, you know, the art of mindfulness. I will type his name in the Thich Nhat Hanh. So he's a Zen master, and he talks a lot about in his books, you know, he writes about a lot about forgiveness, about peace, and you know, how to achieve happiness. And happiness can only be achieved if we have peace inside ourselves. And peace can only be attained if we forgive each other, if we become more compassionate, you know. And Master Thich Nhat Hanh said, you know, sometimes we don't have to do much. We just need to be at peace with ourselves. And, you know, like if we are a tree which is lashed with our branches and with our leaves, the birds will come and stay with us, and people who pass by can sit under our tree and enjoy our shadow. you know, enjoy the cool air under the tree. So sometimes, you know, bringing peace to the world doesn't need big actions. It only needs, you know, small actions throughout our everyday lives.
Your characters are so well developed and relatable, and I still find myself thinking about them long after I've read the book, wondering how they would act in different circumstances and even kind of imagining their future after the book ends. And so relating to this, one of our audience members asked, which of the characters' perspective did you enjoy writing from the most and why?
Oh, I think it must be Hương because the book is told by the voices of two women, Hương and her grandmother, Grandma Diệu Lan. So you know, because Hương is born in 1968, so 5 years before me. So she was born in she was 12. She was 12 when the Hanoi bombings took place. So she was born in 1960. So she is 13 years older than me. So, you know, writing about her is imagining what would happen if I was born earlier, but also to have a chance to bring in my personal experience too. For example, you know, my hesitation of becoming a writer is embraced in the book, you know, because Hương wanted to become a writer, but some of her family members didn't want her to, and you know, and then in the end, she found out that she had no choice but to write, and she wrote in a book, if I was to become a writer, I would not bend my pen to please the eyes and ears of those in power. Power is not just a political power, but also power, world power. For example, minority writer like myself, is normally have to, you know, they have the tendency to be asked to please the Western readers, right? Because, you know, the West has so much power in literature compared to Vietnamese, right? Vietnamese literature. So, you know, so that's why I need to fight for my own beliefs and insert my values and my beliefs into my work. So I really enjoyed writing the character of Hương, and also, you know, the love story there is also kind of inspired by you know, the first crush that I had. You know, I grew up in the countryside of Vietnam, you know, and if you like somebody, you were so shy to express, you know, and at my time growing up, even boys, you know, could not tell the girl that they like them. So it's, you know, took a lot of time for people to kind of convey their feelings. So I wanted to talk about that pure aspect of the first love, you know. And Hương was really lucky that she met the love of her life, and yeah, so
that's such a sweet story. And to introduce that in a tale that does talk about so much devastation is really the strength of your writing, and the beauty of your writing is that you can feel every emotion that you're trying to convey over there. I was in tears, I was laughing, I was so touched. There was so much that was happening in this book, but when I stopped reading, I was left with hope still. So that's the beauty of this book, and I'm sure everyone who's read it can agree with that. And thank you for sharing so many of those quotes as we were talking, because I love the writing. It's so lyrical and beautiful, and you just find solace within the pages and all of the beautiful scenes that you describe, the proverbs, all of it. And so another one of our audience wants to know if you felt that your relationship with nature influences your writing.
Oh, definitely. You know, in the book, Grandma Diệu Lan said, when humans fail us, nature can save us. There is a lot of, you know, I think nowadays people return to medicine provided by nature, right? In the book, Dr. Ngọc saves people by Vietnamese traditional medicine. She uses, you know, roots and barks and flowers and fruit in the jungle to heal people. And I think, you know, I think one sad thing about human is that we destroy nature. You know, Vietnamese nature was destroyed during the war. And that's why I appreciate the fact that Peace Trees has been planting so many trees. I don't know the number. I think tens of thousands of trees or something. But I think this is so important, you know, to plant trees, because trees really give us lives. And you know, I grew up in the countryside of Vietnam. I was surrounded by nature. I was healed by nature. And you know, I think my relationship with nature is really important, because whenever I feel stressed, I go for a walk, and I feel like the trees are talking with me. They are there, they are rustling, they are talking via their leaves, and it's wonderful if we just sit down and we listen to the trees, and we can feel the positive spirit and energy radiated from nature. And I think Vietnam has still so much to heal from the war. You know, I wrote in the book about the impact of Agent Orange and how much devastation brought onto nature by the war, by the so many tons of Agent Orange and other chemicals which were dumped onto Vietnam. And that's why we need to work more to help nature heal. And oh, talking about nature, I need to recommend a book which you should get also from University Bookstore. It's called The Islands of the Missing Tree. And it's most wonderful. You know, it's the book is told in the voices of humans, but also in a voice of a fig tree.
Oh, wow. Sounds wonderful. Well, I'm putting that on my list because I want to read it. And so another audience member agrees with us and says, reading your book was so beautiful. How do you feel your experience in poetry informed how you approached and wrote your first novel?
So I think, so the question is about poetry, right? So yeah, so actually, I need to tell you a secret.
Oh, we won't tell anybody.
I wrote this novel so that more people read my poetry. Because, you know, I'm essentially a poet. So when I was growing up, I was writing my diary in the form of poems. I love poems, you know. In Vietnam, we have many famous poets, and the poet Phùng Quán, whom I love, whom I quote in the book, he has this line: có những phút ngã lòng tôi viện câu thơ và đứng dậy. In moments of difficulty, I hold on to the verse of poetry to pull myself up. So poetry has the power to inspire us, to give us strength. So, you know, I wrote my diaries in poetry. And then one day I was thinking, okay, not many people are reading poetry nowadays, so maybe I should write a novel so that I can sneak poetry into my book. So that's why I sneak a lot of poetry into my novel. I quote poem, I quote, you know, poetry in this book as well, a lot more poetry in my second novel. So my second novel is going to be released in next year in March, on 14th of March 2023. And my publisher, Our Queen Book, is planning for a book tour for me to the US. So I hope to see you in person and hug all of you. But I write about the tale of Kiều, an epic Vietnamese poem in that novel. So the tale of Kiều has more than 3,000 verses in the traditional Vietnamese format, 6x8. And many Vietnamese know this epic poem by heart. And we read, we tell fortune by opening this book by random and reading a verse out loud. So this verse will tell our fortune. So I write about that in the novel, so you will discover it. So there is a Vietnamese English translation of this book. Is called The Tale of Kiều. The Tales of Kiều. So it's considered the most important work of Vietnamese literature. It's very thick and it has been translated by Vietnamese scholars, so it's really beautiful. And so it's about the life of the woman Kiều, who had to sell herself to save her family. But it's really beautiful and moving.
Thank you. That does answer one of their other audience questions, which is to tell us a little bit about your second book. And we have a question from an audience member. Will you write any other books similar in style to The Mountains Sing? I love the book and love learning the history and what my ancestors went through. I'm of Vietnamese descent through this story. Would love to read more from you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm moved whenever I'm connected to a Vietnamese reader who shares with. I have so many Vietnamese readers have reached out to me and told me how the book has the book has helped them to talk with their parents and grandparents. And this book helped me a lot too. I understood much more about my family history and heritage via writing it. And when I wrote it, I was able to ask my parents a lot of questions about their experiences. I want to challenge myself with each project. Quite a few readers have asked me to write a sequel for The Mountains Sing. And I feel like, okay, maybe in the future, but at the moment, I feel like I have so much to learn. And by learning, I need to challenge myself. So I challenge myself in the next book by writing in the voice of a traumatized American veteran who was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. Can you imagine how difficult it is to write in the voice of a traumatized American veteran? But I think anyone can write about anything with research and compassion. So I read a lot of memoirs from helicopter pilots. I talked to veterans. I use my imagination, and I'm really glad that those who read the book so far have told me that they like it. So I hope you will like it too. So my next book is about Amerasians, children of American soldiers and Vietnamese women born and abandoned during the Vietnam War. Many people don't know that nearly 100,000 of Amerasians were born into the Vietnam War, and many of them were abandoned. Recently, so as a journalist, I helped some people find each other. So Amerasians are still trying to find their parents, and some parents are trying to find their children. And the stories are most heartbreaking. For example, recently I translated for Dell, a Black Amerasian who lives in Vietnam, who was given away by her mom to a woman, and that woman sold her for some gold to a couple who exploited Dell, so who never let her go to school. So Dell is illiterate and she was abused, and she did not have access to healthcare. So with the consequence, like she only has 2 teeth left. So she cannot even eat. I invited her to lunch and she could not eat. She could only eat soup and really soft food. And so by miracle, Dell found her father after 50 years through DNA test, through this organization called Amerasians Without Border. Actually, I set up together with Amerasians Without Border, I set up a scholarship program to help Amerasians like Dell and their children. So that's why I got to know Dell, and I translated for her reunion with her father via Facebook video. And it was so emotional because Dell's father, who lives in Ohio, did not know he had a child in Vietnam. Can you imagine? I mean, it was so emotional.
That's powerful and emotional. And thank you for highlighting that too. And, you know, bringing those stories to everyone's attention, because there's so many voices of people who've suffered the repercussions of wars that just go unheard. And I think that's one of the most important things too, about bringing literature to more people and making it accessible, is that those stories are going to be heard and people's voices are going to be heard. That just sounds like a heartbreaking story, but what a reunion after all of this time.
Yeah, I mean, Dell is very lucky that her father's family, you know, her half sisters love her, and you know, whereas most American veterans, when they find out that they have a child in Vietnam, they can't handle it. I think because, you know, they have their own lives and they want to forget about Vietnam and the trauma of the past, and they had no idea about these children, or some of them decided to walk away from these kids because at that time they were young boys. Right. So I mean, it's really emotional and so real. And you know, I also I interviewed American veterans for newspaper article which I published in Vietnam, and which I helped them to find their children. And one of the veterans told me that after Vietnam he was traumatized, so he went back to the US and he was unemployed, and so he was homeless. He slept on the street for more than 40 years. And when I met him, he was just admitted into a home. He was acknowledged by Veterans Affairs, by Veterans Affairs, that he was disabled. So he was able to have a, you know, to enter a shelter. And he said the first thing he did was to have a DNA test in the hope of finding his child. And he said, you know, whenever he slept on the street, he closed his eyes and he would think about, you know, his ex-Vietnamese girlfriend, Kim, running after him and telling him the child was his. And he said no, and he walked away. And he told me he regretted it so much. And, you know, and I mean, you know, these stories are not often known, but if you search on the internet, you know, Amerasians looking for parents, you see so many posts. And I mean, the sad reality is that many of Amerasians parents are getting old, so, you know, they don't have much time left, you know. And I think yeah, so on one hand, I want the community to help them more, facilitate the search, but I also want to highlight the ethical implication of such a search, because I have helped people find each other. I have understood that some people don't want to be found. So whatever real life search you are involved in, you need to take really good care so that you don't hurt people, because some Vietnamese women, for example, it took them a lifetime to rebuild their lives. You know, one woman I talked to gave birth to an Amerasian, but her family at the moment doesn't know anything about her past. Her family did not know she had a relationship with an American and gave birth to an Amerasian, you know. And I mean, you know, so I decided not to write about her on a newspaper, because I wanted to protect her identity. I wanted to protect her family. And I think as a journalist and as a writer, you have so much power. Actually, an article, a book can kill a person. And I really want to, you know, respect people's privacy. You know, I think, you know, whatever power we have, we need to use it for a good purpose. You know, sometimes being careless, we could really bring a lot of trauma onto people who have already suffered trauma. So one of my PhD research question is about research ethics and ethics as a novelist.
And your novel is told with such compassion. You show compassion in it to the soldiers, to all of the young people that were affected by this war, you know, with equal compassion and sympathy and empathy. And that was just beautiful to read and beautiful to see, and really opened my eyes to that understanding. And I hope that that's something that readers will take away, is that there was suffering and there were people hurt and trauma suffered by the kids that were sent to war, by the people where war was ravaged upon them. And there are still people suffering those consequences and trauma. And it was interesting, you were talking about how that PTSD is not spoken about really, and then dealing with that emotional trauma back in Vietnam. So I hope that people are able to speak more openly. And I think books like yours will really help bring those stories to light and show people what that suffering was about. And, you know, when last we spoke, and even now, you spoke about how meeting American veterans, you know, has influenced you and affected you. How do you think, how is working with humanitarian groups and meeting those veterans inspired other writers that you think that, you know, Vietnamese writers that you have spoken to? Have they also had similar experiences?
I think, you know, working with the Vietnam veterans has been life-changing for me. I translated poetry of Americans who fought during the Vietnam War, and I brought them on reading tours, and you cannot imagine the emotions. Veterans from Vietnam came to the reading, and we cried and we hugged and we laughed and we cried again. And you know, I remember facilitating meetings of veterans of both sides, and they were talking about the same battles. They were saying, had we met each other at that time, we would have killed each other. You know, it's really emotional for me to be there and to realize that these ex-soldiers, they're just human beings, right? And during a war, you know, the armies were just saying, you know, kill the other side. They are not humans. We dehumanize others so that, you know, that we don't feel guilty, so that it's easier to kill. So I think being there, I realized we are all so similar. We love our families. We love, you know, to have a normal day when we can eat and laugh and sing and dance, you know. So I think it's really powerful to see, you know, how many Vietnam Americans who were involved in the war have been coming back to Vietnam and to help, you know. So I'm really honored to be, you know, involved with Peace Trees, and I will be the ambassador for Peace Trees forever, because, you know, the story of Geraldine and how she founded Peace Trees, for those who don't know, Geraldine's brother was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, and he died saving a comrade, you know. So the day his helicopter was shot down, you know, I mean, Geraldine told me she heard the news standing in her kitchen, and instead of feeling hateful towards Vietnamese people, she thought about Vietnamese mothers, American mothers, and she wanted to do something for people of both sides, you know. So it took her years to be able to set up this organization when the relationship between Vietnam and the US was normalized. So that's why, you know, I think, you know, this organization was founded by passion, by the wish to heal, the wish to reconcile. And I think, you know, by joining hands, we are not just a tree, we are forming a forest, you know, to give light, to give peace, to give positive energy to other people. Yeah, so I mean, working with organizations like Peace Trees has been most important for me as a Vietnamese. And also now I'm really happy to be working with American with a Border. We just founded this scholarship program, and we want 100% of the donations will go to Americans who are in Vietnam. And like I mentioned the story of Dell, you know, she's illiterate, you know, and her first son is also illiterate. And we are helping people like Dell to send, you know, her children to school. Yeah, so there's still hundreds of Americans who are in Vietnam at the moment, who are living in poverty. Quite a few of them have been able to go to the US due to the American Homecoming Act, but not everyone of them has found a good life in the US. You know, actually, some of them was deported back to Vietnam because they were, you know, they got entangled with the law over there. So, you know, in Vietnam, a lot of them were not accepted. They were considered children of the enemy. And in the US, they were also, a lot of them have been considered as outsiders as well. So, you know, it's really difficult for them.
We have another question in our Q&A. I've been studying Vietnamese for a couple of years now and have been trying to learn about the culture as well. I love how you are true to Vietnamese pronouns in your writing. I've always thought this is a beautiful part of Vietnam. Is this one reason you have the Tran family tree at the start of the book?
Oh, actually, you know, normally when I read a book and I see a family tree, I'm like, oh, this is so complicated. But I think because, you know, I wanted to present the names of the characters, you know, so that it's easy for readers to follow, because there are 20 family members of the Chan family, and you know, and their names are not necessarily easy to remember. So I want to have them there. And actually, you know, if you have a minute, I would encourage you to watch a video of Quyên Ngô. Quyên Ngô is the audiobook narrator of the Mountain Sing, and she did a beautiful video on the meanings of the characters.
I watched that one while I was reading the book. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
So I will write her name, Quyên Ngô. So you know, she did a video on the meanings of the names of the characters in the Mountain Sing. And you know, in Vietnam, each name has a meaning. So, you know, I did not explain it in the book always, but it was my intention to have these names there to serve a purpose. For example, Thống Nhất. So Uncle Đạt has two children, Thống and Nhất, which are really common Vietnamese names, and Thống Nhất together means unification. So, you know, there's a tradition of Vietnam that that people name the children, you know, and together the names mean different things.
I found that that video very useful while I was reading the book. One, to help me with pronunciations, but two, also to show me the beautiful symbology behind those names, because you really pick them so well to suit the story of that character and the narrative. So I do recommend watching that video as you read this book, or even now after you've read this book. And I think we're at time right now. I could sit here and talk to you forever, and I know the whole audience probably wants to hear more, but Khoi Mai, thank you so much for spending this time with us and for answering our questions and sharing your insights and inspirations. And I leave this talk as I left my reading of the Mountain Sing with my eyes fully open to the flaws of this world, but also seeing how much goodness there was and how even one person can make a difference, and how important it is to continue to hope and work for peace and understanding and support groups like Peace Trees Vietnam and all the important work that they are doing. And so I want to thank Peace Trees Vietnam for organizing this presentation, for Natalie for all of that behind the scenes work, putting links in the chat and getting this all together, for Claire for the great introduction. And thank you to our audience for spending time with us and for all of these insightful questions. And as I was following the chat, is Geraldine going to pop in to say hello? Because I saw that in there. So I want to give a chance for that.
Yes, I will invite her to be a panelist.
Wonderful.
Just hopefully that her and Khoi Mai can say a quick hello.
As we wait for Geraldine to appear, I just want to say thank you so much, Grace, for this wonderful conversation. It has been my honor speaking with you. Thank you to everyone who are here with us today. I feel your presence there, and I appreciate your time so much. Thank you for supporting Peace Trees and supporting people such as university bookstores. We need independent booksellers. I want to thank you for supporting Vietnam and for loving Vietnam. Being home, I really feel such a strong connection here, and it's a wonderful place. So I invite you to visit Vietnam whenever you have a chance. Actually, I should post on my website recommendations of what to do in Vietnam, my favorite places.
Well, that would be great. That would be wonderful.
And thank you to Natalie and to Claire for the wonderful things you have done to prepare for this event. So Geraldine is a founder of Peace Trees.
Go on, please. Yes.
Oh, Jay is here. Jay is a wonderful friend, and he's my American brother. Hello, Jay. So Jay's father was involved in Vietnam, and Jay still has a lot of healing to do. And Jay flew to Seattle, drove many hours to Seattle to see me in person when I was there. So I have found so many brothers and sisters through this book. And to anyone who's there, you are my family too by reading this book.